Okay, let's dive right into this. Today we're looking at what has to be one of the most fascinating ironies in all of modern music history. We're talking about a 1966 Beatles album that was actively recalled and literally destroyed by its own record label, only to become an absolute legendary artifact.
Right, so think about that for a second. How exactly does a massive corporate PR disaster end up becoming a $233,000 holy grail for collectors? That's the wild paradox we're exploring in this explainer. We're going to track the unbelievable journey of a single image that sparked global outrage, almost caused a permanent rift between the biggest band in the world and their label, and somehow went straight from a warehouse trash bin to becoming the absolute peak of vinyl collecting.
Section 1. A surreal photo session. To really wrap our heads around this artifact, we have to rewind to March 1966. We're in London, and the Beatles are in the studio with this avant-garde photographer named Robert Whittaker.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the intention behind all the madness. Whittaker was actually setting up this conceptual pop art piece he called a somnambulant adventure. He brings in these white lab coats, actual slabs of raw meat, and strangely enough, decapitated plastic baby dolls. The band was completely exhausted by their squeaky clean, designer-friendly pop star image at the time, so they absolutely ate up the black humor of the situation. It was a massive release for them. But here's the kicker. This bizarre, bloody photo shoot was never, ever originally intended by the photographer to be an album cover.
But the band saw a golden opportunity to make a statement. John Lennon, in particular, explicitly pushed for it to be an album cover. He literally wanted to shatter the public's perception of them as these innocent, pretty little boys. And despite fierce opposition from their manager, Brian Epstein, and understandably deep reluctance from Capitol Records, Lennon and Paul McCartney adamantly forced the label's hand. They demanded to use this avant-garde photo for their upcoming North American compilation album, Yesterday and Today.
Section 2. The costly corporate recall. The band got their way, sure, but their artistic vision was about to slam violently into commercial reality. The launch was an unmitigated disaster.
Look at this incredibly compressed timeline. It shows just how incredibly fast the corporate panic set in. On June 3rd, the Butcher photo hits UK magazines. By June 7th, copies of the US album are pressed and already shipping out to distributors. Almost instantly, DJs, media reviewers, and retailers totally revolt. They absolutely refuse to stock the thing. Just 3 days later, on June 10th, Capitol launches Operation Retrieve, which was this desperate mission to recall all the albums. By June 14th, Capitol is issuing memos, apologizing for what they called a pop art satire, and by June 20th, a mere 5 days after its original release date, the album is shoved back out into the world with a completely new, incredibly safe cover.
But before they could pull the plug, Capitol had already pressed, packaged, and shipped out an astounding 750,000 copies of the album featuring the Butcher cover. That is a massive logistical nightmare.
And the financial damage? Staggering. The recall cost Capitol Records $250,000. To put that into perspective, in 1966, that was an absolute fortune. It completely wiped out the initial profits for a record that was basically guaranteed to top the charts all summer long. Faced with this massive loss, Capitol had to make a really desperate decision.
So instead of destroying all 750,000 covers at the plant, which, by the way, was the original instruction, Capitol realizes it's way cheaper to just hastily glue a bland new photo of the band sitting around a steamer trunk directly over the offending Butcher image. This one single, frantic, cost-cutting choice inadvertently manufactured extreme scarcity and birthed the legendary collector's market we see today.
Which brings us right into Section 3, Anatomy of a Collectible. Because of Capitol's makeshift solution, it turns out not all Butcher covers are created equal. So collectors have rigorously categorized the surviving albums into 3 distinct states. Let's break them down. The first state is the original Butcher cover that was never covered or pasted over. It somehow magically escaped the recall completely. That's the ultimate rarity. The second state is the paste-over cover, meaning that safe trunk slick is still fully intact, secretly hiding the Butcher image underneath. And finally, the third state is where a fan has actively removed that trunk cover to reveal the Butcher underneath. Now, while it's the most common of the rare covers, its value heavily depends on just how cleanly that peeling was actually done.
So, the crucial point is, how do you even know if you're holding a hidden piece of history? Well, if you find a trunk cover out in the wild, you inspect the white space on the right side of the sleeve, right next to the trunk lid. You're looking for Ringo Starr's black V-neck shirt subtly bleeding through the white background of the pasted-on paper. That faint, dark V shape is the ultimate insider secret. It's the telltale sign that you are holding a second state paste-over.
And this brilliantly illustrates the unbelievably tense process of peeling, turning a second state into a third state. First off, collectors have to check the pressing plant number on the back, because that tells you if the factory used an alcohol or saliva-soluble glue. Then, they carefully strip the top layer using masking tape. Next, they sparingly apply the solvent to soften the decades-old glue. And finally, they painstakingly scrape exactly 1 square inch at a time, usually with just a fingernail, to prevent nicking the precious butcher image underneath. It is an anxiety-inducing process, and let me tell you, it has completely ruined thousands of covers.
But for the covers that do survive, especially the completely untouched ones, the valuations are just astronomical. Let's look at Section 4, Record-Breaking Auction Prices.
Now, the absolute peak of condition belongs to a collectors affectionately call the Livingston Butchers. In this massive twist of irony, Alan Livingston, the very Capitol Records president who literally ordered the destruction of the album in the first place, secretly saved a personal stash. He took a pristine cache of 24 still-sealed first-state albums right from the warehouse and just kept them hidden in a closet at his house for over 2 decades.
And because they were kept in that pristine, unopened condition, they naturally command massive premiums. Back in 2006, a mono version of a flawless Livingston Butcher sold at auction for $39,000.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because it gets crazier. By 2016, a mint-condition first-state stereo copy, and keep in mind, stereo copies are significantly rarer because they press like 10 mono records for every 1 stereo. Still in its original shrink wrap, sold for an astonishing $125,000.
But honestly, even the pristine Livingston copies pale in comparison to the ultimate holy grail of this entire saga, John Lennon's personal copy. This was a single-sided prototype he received before the album even released. Lennon loved this image so much, he hung it proudly on the wall of his Dakota apartment in New York. It features original signatures from Lennon, McCartney, and Ringo Starr. Plus, Lennon actually drew an original sketch on the blank back cover. And the provenance gets even wilder. In 1971, Lennon traded this absolutely one-of-a-kind artifact to a teenage fan named Dave Morrell. And what did he trade it for? A rare reel-to-reel bootleg tape of Beatles studio outtakes. Unbelievable, right?
Well, that teenager wisely held on to it for decades. When it finally went to auction at Julien's in 2019, this incredible piece of music history sold for a staggering $233,000. That is a price tag that firmly cements the Butcher cover not just as a rare record, but as the undisputed heavyweight champion of all music memorabilia.
Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought to ponder here. The music on the record, it's fantastic, sure, but is that what collectors are really paying for? Or are they paying for the incredible story of its suppression? A frantic, multi-thousand-dollar corporate mistake accidentally created a multi-million-dollar legend. I think it proves that sometimes the art they try the hardest to hide ends up becoming the art we value the absolute most. Thank you for diving into this awesome slice of history with me on this explainer, and I hope it leaves you eager to uncover the hidden stories behind the music you love.